We all like to believe that there is an explanation for everything, where science is able to prove or disprove most things in life, where we can then settle back and relax knowing that everything is just fine, and there is nothing to be concerned about because science has the answer. However, what people do not like is when an unusual event happens and science has absolutely no explanation, and it remains a mystery that was never solved. The following are 3 such events that continue to baffle experts to this day. Number 3. Santiago Flight 513. On September the 4th, 1954, commercial aircraft Santiago Flight 513 took off from Germany and disappeared somewhere over the Atlantic Ocean. It was assumed the plane crashed and all lives were lost. The plane then reappeared again 35 years later, circled the airport and then landed. The air control tower had no contact with the plane at all. It just appeared out of nowhere and landed west of Porto Alegre on October the 12th, 1989. Airport support and security then went out to board the plane, and when they opened the doors, were totally shocked to discover that all 88 passengers and 4 crew members all in their seats, but they were all skeletons. The pilot, Captain Miguel Victor Cury's skeletal remains were still clutching the controls, and even more startling was that the plane was still idling. After investigating the missing flight, airport security and support authorities refused to comment or speculate on where the plane had been for the intervening 35 years, and the government had hushed up this entire episode. And all news of it was censored, and over the years, any investigations and inquiries eventually disappeared in the sands of time. Dr. Celso Otello, a paranormal researcher, said that Santiago Airline Flight 513 had almost certainly entered a time warp. There is no other explanation. Dr. Otello doesn't seem to have any explanation as to how the plane had managed to land safely, as this type of vintage plane would not have been equipped with automatic pilot, which did not commence until 1965. So how the hell did a skeleton manage to land the plane? Authorities also refused to comment on what Dr. Otello had said, and that the plane had entered a time warp as being the only explanation. Santiago Airlines apparently went out of business in 1956, and the executives, who were still alive at the time, didn't know enough about the flight to comment, or quite possibly would not comment. Flight 513 flew out on September the 4th, 1954, and mysteriously disappeared somewhere over the Atlantic Ocean, where over the years many planes and ships have also disappeared or crashed. If, however, the plane was caught up in some sort of time warp and was somehow teleported to the future, as some of the scientists believed, the next important question we ask is, what killed everyone on board? Rodrigo de Mana, a retired physics professor in Porto Alegre, supported Dr. Otello's claim and said, if there is proof, the public has the right to know the truth about the plane, and it's the government's duty to tell them. He said it was a crime to keep information like this a secret, especially from the relatives of the people who perished on the plane. The government never came out with any particular explanation, and it appears this was proof that a time warp was the only explanation, but feared that telling the public would cause a panic. It also raises questions about Malaysia's flight MH370 with 239 people on board, which disappeared without a trace on March 2014, flying from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing. Maybe that plane has suffered a similar fate and may land somewhere and sometime in the future. Number 2. Sir Victor Goddard's time slip. One day in 1935, Victor Goddard was flying to Edinburgh from Andover, England. It was a normal day as he passed over a dilapidated airfield in Drem, Scotland. The airfield had long been abandoned to the point where everything was now overgrown, and cattle had made themselves at home on what was once an airstrip, which is exactly what Goddard had observed as he flew his plane over what was now basically a farm with no other signs of life. Goddard then continued on his way until he reached his destination at Edinburgh. However, a few days later Goddard began his trip back to Andover. He took the same route, which would lead him once again over the old Drem airfield, but before he could get there, he ran into a peculiar storm. He called it peculiar because, along with high winds and torrential rain, the storm clouds were yellow. It didn't take long for Goddard to become disorientated and lose control of his plane. He tried to regain control by climbing above the yellow clouds, but they seemed to have no end. Then his plane began to fall. Fortunately for him, something unexpected happened. The clouds broke and he could see the ground again. Off in the distance was the Drem airfield. As he approached the airfield, hoping to reorient himself, the storm suddenly vanished and the sky turned bright and sunny. It stopped raining. Everything became clear. But something was different. This time, the airfield at Drem was no longer abandoned. In fact, it looked good as new. He could see mechanics down below and 4 planes, each painted yellow, which sat on the runway. One was a model he'd never seen before, a monoplane unlike anything in the Royal Air Force in 1935. And what were the mechanics wearing? Blue overalls. This, along with the yellow planes, Goddard found strangest of all. RAF mechanics in 1935 wore brown overalls, not blue, and there were no yellow planes to his knowledge. Goddard didn't have much time to think about it though, because he was flying too quickly to truly understand what he was seeing. By the time it had passed over the airfield, the storm had suddenly returned, and the bright sunshine dissolved into hard rain, and those strange yellow clouds engulfed him once more. Once again, he found himself battling for control of his aeroplane, but this time he won and was able to land safely at his home base. When he finally landed, he couldn't help but tell his friends what had happened. As you'd expect, he was met with skepticism, and afterwards he mostly kept the story to himself. He didn't want anyone to think he was crazy. He later recounted this story, along with many others, in his 1975 book, Flight Towards Reality. There is a final twist to this bizarre account. In 1939, the vision that Sir Victor Goddard saw at the Drem airfield actually came to pass. The RAF began to paint their training planes yellow, and a new monoplane, the Magister, just like the one he witnessed in 1935, joined the roster. By that year, even the mechanics' overalls had been updated to blue, and of course the airfield at Drem had had a makeover and was again operating as an airfield. Had Sir Victor Goddard truly experienced a time slip? Or could there be another explanation for what happened to this day in 1935? Was he an inadvertent time traveller? As an adage, there is another strange story surrounding Victor Goddard that took place in a photo taken in 1919, which was first published in 1975 by Sir Victor Goddard himself as a retired RAF officer. The photo is a group portrait of Goddard's squadron, which had served in World War I at the HMS Daedalus training facility. In this group photo, you'll observe an extra ghostly face that appears in the photo. At the back of the airman positioned on the top row, fourth from the left, you can clearly see the face of another man. It is said to be the face of Freddie Jackson, an air mechanic who had been accidentally killed by an airplane propeller 2 days earlier. His funeral had taken place on the day the photograph was snapped. Members of the squadron easily recognised the face as Jackson's. It has been suggested that Jackson, unaware of his death, decided to show up for the group photo. Along with Goddard's mystery flight and this ghost photo, what other strange anomalies occurred in Goddard's life? Number 1. RAF Wittering's Ghost Plane. RAF Wittering has long been one of Britain's major military airfields and is still operating to this day. And during the Second World War, the base was a major hub for British and American warplanes taken off from their operations over Nazi-occupied Europe. A curious incident occurred one night in August 1944 when a young US soldier on guard duty spotted a bomber apparently coming into land, but its wheels failed to make contact with the tarmac. Instead, it ballooned down the runway, and to the young soldier's horror, he waited for it to plough into the control tower. Bracing himself for the resulting explosion and fire, he was amazed to find instead that the bomber disappeared in front of him just as it was about to hit the control tower. The young soldier reported the incident to his superiors, where eventually story got around the base. It was later revealed that during the early days of the war, a bomber did indeed crash into the tower in a manner similar to how the soldier described his sighting, resulting in many fatalities. Since then, witnesses have reported seeing this tragic event being acted out in a ghostly reenactment on many occasions, where some witnesses say they see the aircraft quietly descend and disappear into thin air before it reaches the ground, whilst others say they actually see it crash into the control tower. Many people also say that they have seen ghostly apparitions of airmen milling around the control tower where the aircraft crashed. The control tower itself is claimed to be haunted. Lights are switched on and off on their own accord, and unexplained banging noises are often heard. Phantom footsteps are also heard along the empty corridors of the old No. 1 Squadron hangar, and terrified witnesses have reported seeing dark shadows within the hangar. It is a common theme that paranormal activities such as ghostly reenactments appear again and again after disasters such as battles or plane crashes, etc., where many souls have perished. It is as if a permanent spiritual or supernatural imprint has been left as a perpetual reminder of the incident left in the fabric of time.